The Xylosian observation vessel, the chrysalis of data, floated in the silent dark. It was a smooth, pale ship like a seed or a stone, and it did not move unless it had to. Inside there was no sound but the quiet hum of machines. The air was still and cool. The light was always the same, a soft white glow from the walls and ceiling. In the center of the main room, a being named Kyle watched his screens. He was a xenobiologist. His job was to study life from other stars. His body was slender and covered in fine gray skin. His large dark eyes saw everything in shades of heat and energy. He was a creature of pure logic. For him, everything was data. A new source of data had just arrived in the system, a ship. It was angular and rough, with hard edges and blinking lights. It was nothing like the smooth chrysalis of data. This was a human ship called the Odyssey. Kale had been waiting for it. His people, the Xylosian Collective, knew a little about humans. The data said they were intelligent. It also said they were flawed. They were too emotional. They were illogical. They were weak. Kale was here to see if this was true. He watched as the human ship settled into orbit around a barren red and brown planet. He listened to their communications. There were 3 humans on board. The leader was a man named Jin. His voice was usually calm. The second was a woman named Mina. She was the one who fixed the ship. The third was a man named Tay. He flew the ship and studied rocks. Kale began his log. Observation Day 1. The human subjects have arrived. I will record their behaviors and test the initial data about their species. The humans began their work. A small robotic vehicle, a rover, was prepared to go down to the planet's surface. Kyle watched Mina work on the rover in the ship's cargo bay. She was attaching a drill to its metal arm. "Come on, you little friend," Mina said to the machine. "Just a little more and you will be perfect." She patted the rover's metal side. Kyle made a note. Subject Mina speaks to non-living machinery. She uses emotional language for a tool. This is inefficient. A tool does not need a name or kindness. Later, Jin and Tay were looking at a map of the planet. "I think we should go to the big canyon here," Tay said, pointing. "The rocks there will be the oldest. It is the best place to find answers." Jin looked at the map. "It is also the most dangerous place to land. The wind there is very strong. I do not like the risk, but the data would be great," Tay said, smiling. "We will go to the flat plains first," Jin decided. "It is safer. We can see the canyon from a distance," Kale recorded this. The leader, Jin, did not choose the location with the best scientific data. He chose the safer option. He is allowing fear to influence a logical decision. This is a weakness. He saw many such things. The humans did not just eat their nutrient paste for fuel. They sat together and talked while they ate. They laughed. Sometimes they argued about small, unimportant things. Tay often made sounds with his mouth. Complex patterns of notes he called whistling. It served no purpose. It did not help the ship fly. It did not gather data. To Kale, they were a puzzle. Their files said they had built cities and traveled to the stars. But watching them, they seemed too messy, too unpredictable to do such things. They were wasting energy all the time. Observation Day 7, he said to his log. The humans continue to display non-optimal behaviors. They are social in an excessive way. They seek constant contact and emotional feedback. This seems to be a drain on their focus. Their success as a species remains a paradox. A few days later, Kale saw something new. Mina was in the engine room. A part of the ship's power system, a flow regulator, was not working well. It was causing small power drops. The regulator was old and a little rusty. The simple solution was to clean it and make it work as it was designed. But Mina did not do the simple solution. She spent hours taking the regulator apart. She studied it. Then she took some spare parts and built a new small device. She connected it to the old regulator. Jin came in to check on her. "How is it going, Mina? Do we need to replace the whole unit?" "No, Commander," Mina said, her face smudged with grease. "The old one is fine, but it is slow. I am just giving it a little friend to help it think faster." She finished her work and turned the power back on. The system hummed, stronger and smoother than before. Jin looked at the readings. "This is better than a new one." "Good work." Mina smiled a wide, proud smile. "It is a nice little hack, is it not?" Kale watched, confused. She had not just fixed the problem. She had improved the system beyond its original design. She had created something new. She had used creativity, not just logic. and she felt pride in this. Kale understood the concept of improvement, but for Xylosians, improvement came from a committee and years of testing. It did not come from one person in a dusty engine room feeling happy about a hack. He recorded it, but he did not know what to call it. Subject Mina engaged in a creative engineering solution. The solution is more efficient than the standard one. The motivation appears to be a combination of necessity and a desire for what humans call elegance. Further study is required. The most confusing event happened during a routine spacewalk. Tay was outside collecting small rocks from the ship's hull. A safety cable was supposed to keep him connected to the ship, but a sharp piece of metal on the hull cut the cable. It was not a complete cut, but it was a deep gash. When Tay came back inside, Mina saw the cable. "Tay, look at this," she said, her voice tight. She held up the cable. This was almost cut. You could have floated away. Tay looked at the cable. His face, which was usually smiling, became serious. "I did not see that. Thank you for checking." Jin came over. He did not get angry. He put a hand on Tay's shoulder. "You must be more careful. We need you." Then he looked at Mina. "And we need you to always check our gear." "Thank you, Mina." That evening, the mood on the human ship was quiet. They were more careful with each other. They spoke more softly. Kyle watched the whole thing. He reviewed the data. The cable was damaged. The logical response would be to report the equipment failure and implement a new check procedure. But the humans did more. They showed fear. They showed relief. They showed care for each other. Jin's statement, "We need you," was not a logical assessment of crew roles. It was an emotional statement. It was about bonding. This was the biggest paradox. Their emotions seemed to make them weak and distracted. But sometimes their emotions also made them careful. They made them check each other's safety cables. They made them work together. Kale was beginning to feel a strange sensation. It was not in his data files. It was the feeling that the initial assessment was wrong, or at least it was not the whole story. These humans were not simple, flawed machines. They were something else. They were complex in a way he could not measure with his instruments. He looked at his final log entry for the day. He deleted the words he had first written. Instead, he wrote, "The human subjects are inefficient and illogical, yet they are also creative and cooperative in unpredictable ways. Their emotional output is not just noise. It seems to be part of their system. I do not yet understand the system. I will continue to watch." He turned from his screens and looked out into the blackness of space. The little human ship, the Odyssey, was a tiny speck of light and life. It was messy and warm and full of strange sounds. His own ship, the chrysalis of data, was perfect, silent, and cold. For the first time, Kyle wondered about the value of perfection. The silence of space was a lie. Kyle knew this as a scientific fact. The void was not empty. It was full of tiny particles, radiation, and unseen forces. But to his senses, and to the advanced instruments of the chrysalis of data, it often felt silent and still. This day the lie was revealed in the most violent way. He was observing the human ship, the Odyssey, as it began a slow move to a new orbit. The three humans were going about their normal, inefficient routines. Jin was reviewing data reports. Mina was running a diagnostic on the life support system, singing a soft song to herself. Tay was in the pilot's seat, guiding the ship with one hand and eating a fruit bar with the other. Then, the alarms on Kale's own ship chimed. A soft, polite sound. A proximity warning, a cloud of debris too small and spread out to be detected until it was very close, was drifting on a path that would intersect with the Odyssey. It was not a large cloud, but it was moving very fast. Each tiny piece of rock and metal was a bullet. Kale's logical mind began to calculate. The probability of a catastrophic hit was 34.7%. He prepared to record the event. This would be valuable data, a stress test on human technology, and more importantly, on human psychology under a true survival threat. He expected to see panic. He expected to see their emotional systems overload, leading to chaos and poor decisions. The first impacts were small. Pings and rattles against the Odyssey's hull. Then came a louder tearing sound. A red light flashed on Kale's screen, indicating a hull breach on the human ship. The event had moved from a possibility to a reality. On the Odyssey, the gentle hum of normal life exploded into a storm of noise and light. A piercing siren wailed. The main lights went out, replaced by flashing red emergency beacons. Kale watched, his large dark eyes fixed on the screens. He saw the bioscanners spike. All three humans experienced a massive surge of adrenaline and cortisol. Their heart rates shot up. Their body temperatures fluctuated. The data confirmed extreme fear. This was what he expected, but their actions were the complete opposite of what he expected. Jin, who had been relaxed at his desk a moment before, was now strapped into the command chair. His face was tight, but his voice was like a flat, calm lake. "Report Tay damage assessment. Mina, where is that breach?" Tay's hands flew over his controls. "Portside mid-hull. Section C. I am losing pressure in Section C and D. Life support is offline in those sections. Oxygen levels dropping in the whole ship." Mina's voice came through, clear and sharp. She was already pulling on an emergency suit. "I see it on the schematic. It is a big one. I'm going to patch it." There was no hesitation, no moment of frozen panic. The fear was in her body, according to the scanners, but it was not in her actions. "Jin," Tay said, his voice tense. "The primary power conduit is damaged. We are on batteries. I can give you life support or I can give you main engines." Not both for long, Kale listened, fascinated. This was a classic survival dilemma. The logical choice for a single organism is to preserve itself. But Jin did not choose for himself. "Priority to life support," Jin ordered immediately. "Keep the air we have left clean. Mina needs time to seal the breach." "Acknowledged," Tay said, his fingers working. "Diverting power," Kale made a note. "The leader sacrificed mobility for life support. This prioritizes the group's immediate survival over a potential escape. A high-risk decision." He watched Mina on an internal camera. She was in the damaged section now. The air was full of floating dust and sparks. A jagged tear in the metal hull showed the starry blackness of space. She was attaching a large patch from the inside, a sticky foam that would harden. It was a difficult two-person job, but she was doing it alone, her movements quick and precise. A piece of loose wiring sparked near her face. She flinched but did not stop. She spoke into her suit radio. "Jin, I need more light in here. And the pressure is pulling the patch away. I need to brace myself." Jin responded instantly. "Tay, reroute all non-essential power to Section C lights. Mina, can you use the cargo straps from the wall?" "I see them," she said. She grabbed a heavy strap and hooked it to her suit and then to a solid piece of the wall, anchoring herself against the pull of the vacuum. Kyle was confused. The solution with the cargo strap was not in any standard procedure he could access. It was an improvised, creative solution born from the immediate need. Jin had not told her exactly what to do. He had simply reminded her of a tool that was available. She had applied the tool in a new way. This was the hack mentality again, but now it was for survival. Then a new problem. A small electrical fire started in the wall near Mina. The fire suppression system in that section was dead. "Mina, fire in Section C near your position," Tay yelled. Kale saw Jin's face on the camera. For a split second, pure fear showed in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by a hard determination. He unstrapped himself from his chair. "I am going to help her." "Jin, no," Tay said. "The section is unstable." "The ship dies if we lose that section or if we lose Mina," Jin said, his voice leaving no room for argument. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and a second emergency patch and moved quickly towards the breach. Kyle could not believe it. The commander was leaving the safety of the command center to enter a dangerous, depressurizing area. This was illogical. The leader was the central processor. You protect the central processor. You do not risk it. Yet Jin was risking himself for one other member of the crew. For a Xylosian, it was an unacceptable risk calculation. Jin arrived and fought the fire with the extinguisher while Mina finished securing the main patch. They worked together without needing to speak much. They trusted each other to know what to do. Finally, the breach was sealed. The pressure in the ship began to slowly stabilize. The immediate danger was over. The humans gathered in the central area. They were tired. Their faces were covered in sweat and grime. Mina had a small burn on her arm. They sat on the floor, their backs against the wall. Breathing heavily, Tay looked at Jin. That was too close. Jin just nodded, closing his eyes for a moment. Mina looked at her burned arm and then at Jin. "Thank you," she said softly. Jin opened his eyes and looked at her. "You saved the ship, Mina. We did it together." Kyle watched them. The initial fear was gone. Now his scanners picked up a different mix of chemicals. There was exhaustion, but also a sense of relief and something stronger. A powerful feeling of bonding. They had faced death together and won. He looked back at his initial notes. He had written that their emotions would be a weakness, that in a crisis they would fail. He had been wrong. Their emotions had been the engine of their survival. The fear had made them fast. The care for each other had made them brave. The trust between them had made them efficient. Their ship was broken. It was drifting. It had no main power. But they were alive. They had saved each other. Kyle looked at his own ship, the perfect and untouched chrysalis of data. It was safe. It was logical. But in that moment it felt very empty. He had watched the entire event from a distance, a collector of data. He had not helped. It was the logical thing to do. But as he watched the three humans sit together in their broken ship, sharing water and a quiet word, he felt that strange sensation again. It was a feeling that logic was not the only thing that mattered. He deleted his old log entry. He began a new one, his thoughts uncertain. The initial data was incomplete. Human emotions are not a flaw. They are a complex survival system. In a crisis, fear does not cause panic. It causes focus. Care for the group does not cause weakness. It causes strength. I observed something that my data cannot fully explain. He stopped recording and just watched. The humans were now working again, checking systems, helping each other with their injuries. They were not broken by the disaster. They were united by it. And Kyle, the logical observer, was alone in his perfect ship, wondering about the value of being alone. The human ship, the Odyssey, was dying. It was a dark and silent shape against the stars. Inside, the three humans moved slowly. The red emergency lights were gone. Now only the light from their handheld torches cut through the dark. The air was getting cold. The life support system was working, but only at its most basic level. It was keeping them alive, but it was a struggle. Jin sat in the command chair looking at the blank screens. He had done everything he could. The ship was broken. They had no power to call for help. They had no engines to move. They were trapped in a frozen metal can, waiting for the air to run out or the cold to take them. Mina was in the engineering room. She was trying to find a way to get a little power, just enough to send a signal. But every system was dead. She felt a deep tiredness. It was not just from the hard work. It was from the feeling of failure. She could not fix this. Tay was looking out a window at the black space. He saw the distant stars, cold and sharp. He thought about Earth, about its warm sun and blue skies. It felt very far away. He felt a sadness that was heavy and quiet. On the chrysalis of data, Kale watched all of this. His screens showed the fading heat signatures of the human ship. His instruments listened to the silence from the Odyssey. The crisis was over. The humans had survived the immediate danger, but now they would face the slow end. This was the next part of the data. How did humans behave when hope was gone? He expected to see them give up. He expected to see their emotional systems break down into despair and conflict. This was what the logical models predicted. When a situation has a 0% chance of success, the logical response is to stop wasting energy. But the humans did not stop. Jin stood up from his chair. His body was tired, but his voice was firm. "We are not finished," he said. "Mina, is there any way to use the backup batteries for a short-range signal? Anything at all?" Mina's voice came back, tired but trying. "I have tried, Jin. The main transmitter is dead. It is like trying to talk with a broken voice." "Then we will find another way," Jin said. He did not sound like he believed it, but he said it anyway. Tay turned from the window. "What about the emergency beacon? The one that shoots out into space?" "It is in the damaged section," Mina replied. "It is probably broken too, and even if it works, it would take years for anyone to find it." They were quiet for a moment. The situation was hopeless. The data was clear. Kale watched them. He saw them huddled together in the cold dark. They did not argue. They did not blame each other. They just sat close, sharing their body heat. Jin put a hand on Mina's shoulder. Tay offered a small water container to Jin. They were still a group. They were still caring for each other. Even in the face of certain death, their first priority was each other. This was not logical. A single organism, when dying, focuses on itself, But these three were acting as one single organism. Their bond was the last thing to break. Cale looked at his own ship. It was warm. It was safe. It was full of power. He could watch them die and record all the data. It was the sensible thing to do. First contact with a dying, desperate species could be dangerous. His mission was to observe, not to interfere. But the image of them working together to save their ship was stuck in his mind. He saw Mina risking her life to patch the hull. He saw Jin running into a fire to help her. He saw Tay making the hard choice to give them air instead of power. They were flawed, but they were brave. They were illogical, but they were noble. A conflict began inside Kyle. It was a war between his logic and something new. Something he had no name for. His logic said, observe and record. Do not get involved. But the new feeling said, they do not deserve to die alone in the dark. He looked at his communication panel. It would be so easy to send a signal, but it was against all his rules. Then he saw Jin on the screen. The human commander was looking at a picture of his family on his small personal device. His face was sad, but he was not crying. He was just remembering. He was thinking of the people he loved. That was the moment the conflict ended. Cale understood that for humans, life was not just about survival. It was about connection. To let them die was to erase not just 3 lives, but all the connections they had. It was to erase the people who loved them, the people they loved. It was a much greater loss than his data had calculated. He made a decision. It was not a logical decision. It was a different kind of decision. His long fingers moved over the control panel. He opened a communication channel. He typed a message. It was a simple, direct message. Then he pressed the button to send. On the Odyssey, a light on the broken console flickered. A single green light. A soft beeping sound echoed in the quiet ship. Tay was the first to hear it. What was that? He whispered. Jin and Mina looked up. They saw the green light. It was on the emergency comms panel, a system they thought was completely dead. Jin moved quickly to the panel. He pressed a button. A voice came through the speaker. It was a strange voice, flat and without any feeling, like a machine. Human vessel Odyssey, the voice said. This is xenobiologist Cale of the Xylosian Collective. I'm initiating a rescue protocol. Please prepare for docking. For a moment, the 3 humans were completely silent. They could not believe what they were hearing. They looked at each other, their faces showing shock and a sudden wild hope. Who? What is that? Mina asked, her voice a whisper. Jin stared at the console. He took a deep breath and pressed the reply button. This is Commander Jin of the Odyssey. We hear you, we need help. Our ship is dead. We have injuries. The state of your ship is known, the flat voice replied. I will bring my ship alongside. I will extend a docking tube to your main airlock. Can you operate your airlock manually? Mina nodded quickly. Yes. Yes, I can do that. I can open it from inside. Good, the voice said. I am approaching now. They looked out the window. The smooth, pale ship they had seen in the distance was now moving towards them. It was silent and graceful. It looked like a ghost or an angel coming to save them. Tay let out a breath he did not know he was holding. He was watching us the whole time. Jin nodded slowly. It does not matter. He is helping us now. He looked at his crew. Mina, get the airlock ready. Tay, gather any emergency supplies in the personal logs. We are leaving the Odyssey. They moved with a new energy. The tiredness was gone, replaced by the shock of being saved. They were going to live. Cale watched them prepare from his ship. He saw the hope return to their faces. He felt the strange feeling inside him grow stronger. It was a warm feeling. He had broken his rules. He had acted on something other than logic, and it felt right. He guided his ship next to the broken Odyssey. He extended a clean white docking tube. It connected to the human ship's airlock with a soft thud. He stood up from his chair. He was about to meet the humans. He was no longer just an observer. He was now a part of their story. He did not know what would happen next, but for the first time in his long life, Cale was not thinking about data. He was thinking about people. The airlock door opened with a quiet hiss. A wave of warm, clean air flowed into the cold, stale atmosphere of the Odyssey. Jin, Mina, and Tay stood together, their small bags of personal items in their hands. They stepped from their dark, broken world into the light of the chrysalis of data. The difference was shocking. Their ship was all sharp edges, noise, and patches. This ship was smooth and silent. The walls glowed with a soft white light. The air smelled of nothing. It was perfectly clean. It was also perfectly quiet. There was no hum of engines, no creak of metal. It was the quietest place they had ever been. Waiting for them was Kale. He was taller than they expected and very thin. His gray skin and large dark eyes were strange, but his face showed no expression. He did not look friendly or unfriendly. He just looked observant. "Welcome to the chrysalis of data," he said in his flat machine-like voice. "I am Kale. Your biological signs show exhaustion and minor injury. Please follow me." He turned and walked away, not waiting to see if they followed. They hurried after him, their boots making no sound on the smooth floor. He led them to a small round room. It had 3 simple curved platforms coming from the walls. "This is a resting area," Kyle said. "You may use these platforms for sleep. A nutritional paste will be provided for your physical needs." He stood and watched them, as if waiting for them to begin their rest cycle immediately. The humans looked at the hard, smooth platforms. They looked at each other. This was not a bedroom. It was a storage closet for people. Jin spoke first. "Thank you, Kyle, for saving our lives. We owe you a great debt." Kyle tilted his head. "A debt is a financial or social obligation. My actions were a choice. There is no debt." He looked at Mina's arm where the burn was. "Your injury requires attention. I have medical supplies." He brought a small device and pointed it at Mina's arm. A soft blue light came out. The pain in her arm faded instantly, and the red burn mark slowly began to shrink. "Wow," Mina said. "Thank you." "It is a simple repair of damaged tissue," Kale replied. He then offered them each a small packet of thick gray paste. "This is nutrition. It contains all you need." They opened the packets and tasted the paste. It was bland. It had no flavor at all. It was like eating wet paper. They ate it because they were hungry, but it was a joyless meal. Kale watched them eat. He saw the looks on their faces. "Is the nutrition not sufficient?" he asked. "It is fine," Jin said politely. "It is just, on our ship we have warm food. It is a small comfort." "Warmth is not necessary for nutrition," Kale stated. "It is an inefficiency." Later, Tay tried to sleep on the hard platform. He tossed and turned. The light in the room was always the same soft white. There was no day or night. The silence was so deep it felt heavy. He missed the familiar hum of the Odyssey. Mina was shivering. The ship's temperature was perfect for a Xylotian, but for a human it was too cold. "Kyle," she asked, "is it possible to make this room a little warmer?" Kale, who seemed to be always nearby observing, answered from the doorway. "Your body temperature is within safe limits. Why do you require more warmth?" "It is not about being safe," Mina explained. "It is about being comfortable. We feel better when we are warm." Kyle processed this. Comfort was not a logical need. Safety was logical. He adjusted the temperature a little, but he did not understand. After a while, the humans felt a deep sadness. They were safe, but they were miserable. The ship was too perfect. It had no life. They huddled together on the floor because it felt better than being alone on the separate platforms. Mina looked around the empty room. An idea came to her. "Kale," she said, "we have some things from our ship. Would it be okay if we made this space a little more like home, just for our stay?" Kale was curious. "What do you wish to do? May we have some of those empty storage containers?" Jin asked, pointing to some bins in the corner. "And maybe some simple tools? And a power source?" Kyle agreed. He provided the materials. He watched, fascinated, as the humans began to work. This was a new kind of data. Using wires and a small power cell, Tay and Mina built a simple heating element. They placed it inside a metal bowl from their ship. It was not a stove, but it gave off a warm orange glow. They placed it in the center of the room. Mina took a broken piece of equipment from the Odyssey and adjusted its light settings. She made it give off a soft yellow light, like a sunset instead of the bright white of the ship. She pointed it at the ceiling. Tay took 3 food packets and, using the heater, managed to warm them up. He even mixed in a few spices he had saved from his personal bag. The smell of warm, spiced food began to fill the sterile air. They moved the storage containers to sit around the warm heater. They put their blankets on the floor. In just an hour, they had transformed the cold, impersonal room. It was now a warm, cozy space. The yellow light pushed back the sterile white. The smell of food replaced the smell of nothing. The gentle heat from the bowl warmed their hands and faces. Kale stood at the doorway watching. He had seen them build and repair before, but this was different. They were not building for function alone. They were building for feeling. They were creating an environment that fed their spirits, not just their bodies. Then Jin did something unexpected. He looked at Kale. "Will you join us?" he asked. "We are going to eat." "You are welcome." Kyle was silent for a moment. The invitation was illogical. He did not need to eat, but the desire to understand was strong. He walked into the room and sat stiffly on one of the containers. Tay handed him a packet of the warmed food. Kyle took it. He did not eat it, but he held it, feeling the warmth seep into his fine gray skin. For a while, they just sat in the warmth. Then Jin started to talk. He did not talk about science or ships. He talked about Earth. He talked about the sound of rain on a roof. He talked about the feeling of green grass under your feet. He talked about his family and how his daughter liked to watch the birds. Mina talked about her home city, the bright lights at night, and the smell of food from many small restaurants. Tay talked about the mountains where he grew up and the clear, cold air. They were not just sharing information. They were sharing memories. They were sharing pieces of their home. They were building a different kind of warmth, a warmth made of shared stories. Kyle listened. He did not speak, but he listened to every word. He watched their faces in the golden light. He saw how they smiled when they remembered. He felt the warmth from the little metal bowl. He smelled the strange, pleasant smell of the food he finally understood. The heater, the light, the food. They were not just for physical comfort. They were tools for the soul. They were a way to fight the emptiness of space. They were a way to remember that they were alive, and that being alive was about more than just breathing. This was what it meant to make a home. It was not about having a place to sleep. It was about creating a small piece of your world no matter where you were. It was about light, warmth, and shared stories. The perfect logical silence of his ship had felt empty before. Now, surrounded by the quiet talk and the warm yellow light, he realized that this imperfect room was far richer than any other part of his vessel. He was not just observing humans anymore. He was, for the first time, sitting by their hearth. The journey to the transfer point took several days. During that time, the humans lived in the room they had made warm. Kale continued to watch them, but it was different now. He was not just a scientist watching subjects. He was a guest in their small, temporary home. He spent more time sitting with them, listening to their stories and feeling the strange warmth from their metal bowl heater. He saw how they cared for each other. Mina would make sure Tay had an extra blanket because he felt the cold more. Tay would save a little of his favorite food for Jin. Jin always made sure everyone was okay before he rested. It was a constant, quiet dance of kindness. It was not necessary for survival, but it seemed to make their survival feel worthwhile. Kale tried to understand. He asked them questions. "Why do you give him your food when you are also hungry?" he asked Tay one day. Tay thought about it. "Because it makes me happy to see him happy," he said. "It is a good feeling." Cal did not understand the feeling, but he saw that it was real. It was another piece of the puzzle. He also saw them be sad. They talked about their lost ship, the Odyssey. It was not just a machine to them. It was their home. They had memories in every room. They felt its loss like the loss of a friend. Kale had never felt sad about a machine before. To him, a ship was a tool. When a tool breaks, you get a new one. But for the humans, some tools had souls. Finally, the chrysalis of data arrived at the meeting point. A large, boxy human transport ship was waiting for them. It was not beautiful, but it looked strong and safe. It was time to say goodbye. The humans packed their small bags. They took down their yellow light. They turned off their little heater. The room became cold and white and silent again. It felt empty now, even to Kale. They walked with him to the airlock. Jin, Mina, and Tay stood facing the tall, gray alien who had saved their lives. Jin spoke for all of them. "Kyle, we can never thank you enough. You gave us our lives back. We will never forget you." Kyle looked at them. His large, dark eyes moved from Jin's honest face to Mina's grateful smile, to Tay's friendly eyes. He felt that strange feeling again, stronger than ever. It was a feeling of loss. "My initial assessment of your species was incorrect," Kale said. his voice still flat, but the words were careful and important. I believed that logic was the best way to survive. I was wrong. What is the best way? Mina asked softly. Kale was silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. It is not one thing. It is the mix of many things. Your fear makes you careful. Your compassion makes you help each other. Your hope makes you keep going when things are dark. You create beauty in the empty places because you carry the memory of home inside you. I thought you were flawed because you feel. I now understand you succeed because you feel. The humans were quiet. They understood the great compliment he was giving them. He was not just saying they were brave. He was saying their entire way of life had value. Kale held out a small, smooth data crystal. This is my final report to the Xylosian Collective. It is not like my other reports. It is called On the Human Condition, a Study in Resilient Hope. My people search for perfection through logic alone. But you have shown me that true strength is in your imperfections. It is in your ability to adapt and in the bonds you make with each other. That is what it means to be human. Jin took the crystal. His hand was steady, but his eyes were bright with emotion. We will learn from it, he promised, and we will remember the friend who wrote it. The airlock door on the chrysalis of data opened, showing the connecting tunnel to the human transport ship. It was time to go. One by one, the humans stepped into the tunnel. Mina gave a small wave. Tay nodded, a serious look on his usually cheerful face. Jin was the last to go. He looked at Kale one more time, and then he stepped through. The airlock door closed behind them. Kale was alone again. He went back to his observation room. His screens were empty. The human transport ship was moving away, getting smaller and smaller against the stars. The silence of his ship returned. But it was a different silence now. Before, the silence was peaceful. Now it was heavy. It was a silence that remembered the sound of human voices, the smell of their warm food, and the glow of their yellow light. He looked around his perfect ship. Everything was in its place. The light was constant. The temperature was perfect. The logic was flawless, but it felt cold. It felt dead. The humans were gone, but they had left something behind. They had left a question in Kale's mind. They had left a new feeling in his heart. They had shown him a different way to live. A way that was messy and warm and full of love. He had given them a data crystal with his report. But they had given him something much more valuable. They had given him a new way to see the universe. He sat in his chair for a long time, watching the stars. He was not collecting data. He was just thinking. He thought about warmth and friendship and what it means to have a home. He was a scientist of the Xylosian Collective. He was a creature of logic. But now he was also something more. He was a being who had sat by the hearth of humanity, and he had felt its warmth. And he knew that he would never be the same again.